Let me. Others, can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, others, great. So I think your webcam has had some issues, but that's fine. We can
Yes.
hear you. That's great. So this is a question since you're actively involved in the campaign in UP. Um,
Yes.
it's the question is, it's easy to appeal to the urban centric electorate where the whole issue of fighting corruption sort of resonates with them. But in the rural areas, it's a different story about convincing them to vote for the Aam Aadmi Party. So how are you handling that, particularly in a place like UP?
Well, there are two aspects to the answer. One, I agree that especially in rural parts of the hinterland of Uttar Pradesh and other such places in the country, there is a challenge in terms of literacy and education levels being low. But I believe, and with all my visits and traveling within these parts of the country, I realized that even though they may be economically poor, they may be poor from an education background standpoint, but political maturity is very high among the rural parts of India. And that's best represented in the fact that after having been ruled for the last 25, 30 years by parties and political systems which have promised them progress, which have promised them education, which has promised them development and infrastructure and a better future, have done. And something which I see very clearly emerging out in the open now among those sections of society. And therefore, because of that, I see that the challenge of making them understand the alternative that we bring to them is becoming much easier. So what is happening now is when we go and talk to people, people come back to us from rural parts of the country and say that what is it that for 4 months and 11 years in a year, in a period of a government, we look at issues in terms of future and security for our children, education and health, so on and so forth. But in the 60th month of a government's year, we try and remember, or parties try and make us remember what our caste background is, or what our religious background is. And we believe that it's time for us to step out of that now and look at what is it that is important for 4 years and 11 months, and why should that not remain important in the 60th month as well. And that is something which is dramatically shifting. As modes of communication, internet, and information are reaching rural parts of the country, they are realizing even faster that how far they have been left behind. And that in essence is what is becoming the genesis of a complete shift in mindset, in terms of what was earlier known by parties like BSP and SP of what kind of social engineering that they did. I think this is an economic engineering which is happening in rural India, especially in Uttar Pradesh, where we see people now realizing that they have been taking for a ride for the last 30 years. I was in Amethi and Raebareli over the last couple of days, and people came to us and said that the British left India, but they used effectively a policy of divide and rule. And unfortunately, that policy of divide and rule is still being followed by Indian political parties after independence. And it's time for us to get rid of that malaise once and for all. And that kind of accurate perception and that kind of understanding is something which sounds to me, if I may be a little melodramatic, sounds to me the beginning of a revolution in terms of understanding of people's perspective and how they've been taken for a ride, understanding of the fact that how important genuine progress driven issues are for people and society at large, and how far behind they have been left versus some of the their counterparts in some of the larger and more modern upward centers, metro centers in the country. And in that sense, the job for us is becoming much easier. Also, the realization that it is not just a question of getting substituted by one party and from another, or from one candidate to another. It is now a real alternative with the right intent which is there in front of them for the first time. And I think it is that intent which is turning out to be the crystallizing factor. So many people walk up to us and say that you may or may not be able to do it, but at least you're the first in 20, 30, 40 years to have shown intent.
All
And
right.
that is why we are with you.
Thank you so much, Adarsh. That was a great view from the ground over in UP. So we wish you all the luck with that.